Hello guys and welcome back to the channel. So in today's video we're going to be doing a slow SJT run through. So I realize that perhaps in some of my SJT videos, I've only done one or two so far, but you might not necessarily be able to understand what I'm thinking all the time because obviously it's quite hard for me to fully explain every question while still do it at proper exam speed, right? So what I thought I would do today is I would take you through some of the opening 10 questions and I would try and explain the logic that I would use to answer them and the logic that I would use based off on their answers as well. So to basically explain how my logic fits. And so what technique I'm going to be using here is something called the 50-50-50-50 technique. And if you guys haven't already familiarized yourself with this technique, you can do by going to the SJT playlist on my channel. And you can see I've done a video on there called the 50-50 technique, which I found to be really, really useful. Okay, so yeah, okay, so we're going to skip question one for now because it's a little bit of a dodgy one, and let's go to question two. So let's have a read of this. So Serena is a dentist student who is shadowing a senior dentist, Mr. Warder. Mr. Warder is replacing a filling for a patient using a brand new tool. The tool is different to the one Serena conducted her training on at university. A few days later, another patient requires a filling replacement, and Mr. Warder asks Serena to conduct the procedure while he supervises. She's not confident in her ability to use the new tool, that she has never conducted the procedure using the new tool before. So how important is it to take into account? So remember, with the 50-50 idea, the idea is that we try and first of all decide, is it appropriate or is it important or not? So should Serena consider the fact that she's never conducted the procedure using the new tool before? I would say yes, you definitely should. Okay, so therefore it's between A and B. If you said no, then it would have been between C and D. Now we know, therefore, it's between A and B. So now we ask ourselves, is there anything bad about this at all, or is this only important to think about? So either is there something to not consider about the situation? Is this is there nothing to not consider here? If that makes sense. Once again, if you haven't seen my 50-50 video, this won't make as much sense. So when it says that she's never conducted the procedure using a new tool before, is this something you wouldn't consider? So one of the things I like to do is draw parallels, right? So I like to make my own scenarios or try to imagine them. So imagine you're in a hospital and you go into the theatre and let's say you've been, let's put it like this. So let's say you've been asked to um, perform a specific type of leg surgery, and let's imagine you are a surgeon who only works on the arm. Okay, I don't know why. But let's say that you've only done arm surgery and you're asked to do leg surgery, right? Would it matter that you haven't done leg surgery before? I would say 100%. Okay, it's the same thing here. She's never conducted the procedure using the new tool before. She's never done this thing before, especially with this new tool. So this 100% matters. There's nothing here to not consider. Okay, so the answer here is A. The new tool may be more effective. Once again, is it important? Yes, 100%. Yeah, so it's between A or B. Is there something to not consider here, right? So is the new tool being more effective? Is there, should she forget about that? No, definitely not, right? This is all things to consider. So this is definitely A. Okay, because it goes back to the idea of patient safety as well. Because if it's more effective, and kind of remember, we're meant to always keep our patients in our best interest. They're meant to be number one. Okay, so the fact that it may be more effective means yes, this is very, very important to consider because it means you may be able to provide better care for your patients. That Mr. Warder may not give her other learning opportunities if he finds out she's not familiar with using the latest tools. So think about it this way. So for example, if you had a patient that you have to do a cannula on, let's say you are an early medical student that you've never done a cannula before, you've never been supervised to do it, and the consultant just asks you to do it, would you just do it even without not knowing what to do? No, you wouldn't. Right. So the point here is the fact that the fact about these learning opportunities doesn't matter because what matters is patient safety, right? The learning opportunities really don't matter here in the grand scheme of things. So therefore, it's between C and D. But then you have to ask yourself, okay, but is there something important here? Are learning opportunities important? Yes, they're slightly important, right? Definitely 100% not important in the grand scheme of things, right? Patient safety is what matters. But there is something to consider here, which is what makes it C as opposed to a D. And if we go back to that first one, for example, the reason why I wanted to come back to this one is because I think the actual answer is different to what I would say. So it says here that Mr. Warder may not be aware of what tool she trained on at university. So is this something to consider? So for example, if you, let's say you and your friend are going out somewhere and for some reason one of you needs to drive a car really urgently, and let's say that you've only done automatic. You've only driven an automatic car, whereas your friend's driven manual. Let's say your friend has some injury, so he can't drive, and he asks you to drive his manual car. right? So let's just imagine driving licenses and stuff or whatever. You get what I mean. I'm trying to make up a scenario, but the point here is that it's 100% important, right? The fact that Mr. Warder may not be aware of the tool that she's trained on at university. So I'd say it's between A or B. And so here, this is where the answer tracks. It says the actual answer here says it's B, and they say that it's because it's not only Mr. Warder's kind of it's not only his responsibility, it's also Serena's. So there's something to not consider here because it's not just enough to say, oh, this is extremely important because Mr. Warder might not be aware, but also that Serena should take some responsibility. But the way that I like to think about it is, remember, these situations are meant to be considered separately. So I would say there's nothing about this that you shouldn't not consider. Does that make sense? So I would argue that it's A, anyways. But yeah, that's just how it is, I guess. So, that she's a student, so she will not be expected to know everything. Same thing again, I would say this is A, very important. So it's important because it means that she can be open and honest with Mr. Warder. I mean, she should be open and honest anyways, but here she should be confident doing that. Is there something to not consider here? So should she not consider that she's a student? Not really. Remember, students are here to learn. And it also means that she can take on the feedback from Mr. Warder in a positive manner, and it also means that she is okay to say, listen, I haven't done this before, because she's just a student, right? It's not like she's a qualified consultant who has been doing this for 50 years and then is unable to do something like this. Okay, but I mean, even in that scenario, it's still okay. It's always okay to be like, you know what, I don't know. You know what, I'm going to take a step back, whatever. Okay, but yeah, cool. So it's just that first one that I would personally disagree with. Okay, so let's read the scenario. So Sapphire has been asked to do a group presentation on sleep disorders as part of her course. In a meeting earlier in the week, she and her partner Dominic agreed that they would evenly distribute the work and would each present the sections that they wrote. The presentation is in an hour, and Sapphire and Dominic are practicing when Dominic begins to panic and tells Sapphire that he does not think he can present his sections as he's too nervous. He asks Sapphire to present his sections for him. Okay, so her own confidence in presenting Dominic's slides. So how important is this to take into account the following considerations for Sapphire? So, should she think about this? 100%, right? Right. So imagine, for example, you would never. The reason why, if you think about it on the ward, doctors who've taken care of a patient are the ones that normally speak to the family members and to the patient themselves because they know them best, right? You don't just get a random doctor from a different ward coming in to speak to patients, because if that was the case, then there would be no problems with the NHS. Okay, that's a bit of an overstatement, but the point is that we'd just be able to get any random doctor from the ward, show them the handover or the details on the patient's medical chart, and then they'll be able to speak to the patient, and there'll be no more no more patients and their families waiting for doctors to speak to them, because you could just pull in any random medical student or a junior doctor from anywhere, right? And you'd be fine. But the point is, that's not how it works, right? That's not how it works, because it's not, they don't know everything about it. So same thing here with Dominic's slides. Yes, he's got some slides, but that doesn't mean that Sapphire's automatically going to be able to know everything about it, right? Because you don't want her to present wrong information. That's the other thing as well. Okay, so this is important. And is there anything to not consider here? Not really, because like I said, don't want presentation of false information. Okay, so Dominic's well-being. This is another weird one as well. So normally anything to do with well-being and how people are feeling or patients are normally just straight A's. Okay, so obviously this is important. Here they've put B, and yeah, so their reasoning for why it's B is they say that it's important to support. I mean, it's really weird. So if you look at the answer here, they don't actually give a reason for why it's B. So remember, one of the things that I said with like a B as opposed to an A, or like a C as opposed to a D, is there has to be something that's different. So if it's B as opposed to A, that means there's something that's not that great. Okay, like it's mainly good, but there's something that's bad. If it's C as opposed to D, that means it's mainly bad, but there's something that's good. But here they've not really put anything that's bad, if you know what I mean. So I'll be completely honest, I would have put A for this. I really would have. But yeah, I guess something to learn here. Maybe the only thing I can think of is that at the end of the day, right, Dominic is doing a presentation. He's not putting a cannula into a patient. He's not diagnosing a patient. He's not doing any of the whatever, right? So the point here is, and I think I can see why they might put B now that I think about it, but they haven't really explained it here. And I'll explain what my explanation is. Medical professionals, we have to do things that are outside our comfort zone, right? No one is born a doctor, right? The people that go to medical school, you're not a doctor when you enter medical school. You're not really a doctor properly when you probably leave medical school as well. Maybe I'm misjudging, but the point is that you learn on the job, right? People that aren't confident become confident. People that couldn't speak to patients become able to speak to patients, and so on and so on. So the point here is Dominic's well-being, yes, it matters, but maybe it is just the fact that, you know what, he also just has to think that there will be situations where he will eventually have to present information. Think about MDTs. Think about when you're speaking to patients and their relatives in high-pressure situations in a hospital environment. Like, these are all things that matter, basically. Okay, so for that reason, I'd say the answer is B as opposed to A. But like I said, I probably would have put A for that last one. I guess maybe it's weird because I'm forcing myself to give a reason for why it is B because I saw the answer was B. But like I said, yeah, I'll be honest with you guys, and I always try to be. I would have probably put A for that last one. But the Dominic would do the same for her in this situation. This is that important. So do you, let's say, let's put it this way, for example, if you see someone who is bleeding out on the side of the street, would you stop to think, would they have done that for me? No, right? And you shouldn't, because the idea of any situation is you deal with situations not because of who the person is, right? You deal with situations because it's wrong, or you deal with situations because there's a lack of safety, or because there's danger, or because there's a threat. So here, it's not about how Dominic would. It's not anything to do with about how he would do the same for her or whatever. So it's definitely between C and D. And is there anything to consider here slightly? Right? Not really, because that would be a bit petty to kind of say, "Oh, I'm not doing it because you wouldn't have done that for me." Like, that's not how we're meant to behave, right? Professionalism is to the highest standard. I think one of the things, and this is something that I think you guys should try and live your lives by as well. And I'm getting very philosophical here, giving out advice, but I think it's one of those things where you should always hold people to high standards, regardless of who they are, right? So hold people to the same high standards that you'd like to hold yourself to. And importantly, hold yourself to your high standards as well. So if someone points something out, listen to them. Constructive feedback and criticism are extremely, extremely important. But yeah, sorry for the tangent there. Let's keep going. That they had agreed to each present their own sections of the presentation. Okay, so yeah, so this is an interesting question. So in this situation, how should Sapphire react? So the point is, such should she be like, oh, but last week you said that you would present. You said you would present, right? Like it feels kind of like a pointless thing to bring up. And so I would argue that it's not important here, right? Because situations change, scenarios change. You've got to be adaptable. That's the whole idea of not just being a medical professional, but of being human, I would argue, right? You can't create one rule, right, and just go with it. You can't create one rule and run with it. That's not how life works, okay? Especially here, as a medical professional, let's say, for example, X doctor was meant to perform a surgery, but then that doctor got called away to a more important surgery. Someone else is going to have to step in and fill that role. Okay, or it might be that the patient's surgery gets rescheduled for later as a result. There's going to be many things basically, but the point is you can't just stick with that rigidity. So that they need to agree to present their own sections of the presentation. I argue overall it's not important. So between C and D, okay, and then out of C and D, is there something to slightly consider here? Yeah, because it means that I guess perhaps they had agreed to doing this, and obviously you can't just give your word out kind of as and when you like it, and just not keep to it, right? And obviously, like I said, circumstances do change, so that's why it's overall not important. But here's something slightly important because obviously you can't keep doing this. Like Dominic did say that he would present the work, and if he did have a problem and he was worried about this kind of thing, he probably should have brought it up a little bit earlier. Okay. And then the last question that we're going to go through. So whether Dominic is required to present in order to be graded. Well, I would argue that anything that really talks about exams and official things is always going to be important. So it's definitely between A and B. So it's going to be important as in it's going to be the top half. And so here, is anything not to consider here? So not really. Like I said, exams and stuff are very, very important. So the answer to this is A. Okay. So yeah. So I hope you guys can understand some of the logic that I use behind these questions. And I definitely am not infallible, right? Like I definitely get questions wrong, 100%. You'll see that in any one of my videos. But the point is, overall, as long as you understand this idea, it will help you very much in the long term. And like I said, some of the stuff that I've said here might not make sense unless you've already watched my SJT 50/50 technique video, which if you haven't done so, I'd highly recommend you to watch. Okay, so thank you as always for all of your support, guys. Numbers like 3,000, honestly unreal. Like I genuinely am speechless. I don't even know what to say. And I'm recording this whilst I'm at university right now. So thank you for bearing with me. And as you can probably see, my upload schedule has decreased a little bit, but I really, really want to keep going at least one video a day until the Ucat season runs out. But no, thank you as always, and especially for those of you who've done your tests and are constantly sending me messages. Thank you so much. And for those of you who've sent me messages about inquiries, I'll do my best to get back to you. Yeah, hopefully you can hear back from me very, very shortly. Okay, I will see you guys all in the next video. Thank you as always.